Have you ever felt like life keeps slipping through your fingers? Like no matter how hard you try, peace always feels out of reach. You're not alone. For thousands of years, people have been wrestling with the same questions. How do I live well? How do I handle pain? How do I find purpose in a world that seems so unpredictable? The ancient Stoics, philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, devoted their lives to answering these questions. And their answers weren't just theoretical. They were practical, tested in the chaos of real life, and designed to help you become resilient, calm, and unshakable, no matter what comes your way. In this journey through 20 Stoic truths, we're not simply reciting old wisdom for the sake of sounding philosophical. We're exploring ideas that can change the way you experience every single day of your life. These truths are like keys that can unlock a way of living where you are no longer a prisoner of fear, anger, or constant frustration. The Stoics didn't promise a painless life. They promised a meaningful one, a life where your mind becomes your fortress and your heart remains open even in the harshest storms. So let's start with one of the most fundamental truths. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But think about how often we forget this. How often do you let the behavior of others ruin your day? A rude comment online, a driver cutting you off, an unexpected setback at work. We give these moments the power to dictate our emotions, as if we are helpless. But the Stoics teach us that we are never helpless. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Imagine living every day as if this truth were tattooed on your soul. You'd stop trying to control the uncontrollable and start mastering the one thing that has always been yours, your own mind. This leads us to another essential truth. Discomfort is not your enemy, it is your greatest teacher. Modern life conditions us to seek constant ease, to avoid pain at all costs. But the Stoics saw hardship differently. They saw it as the forge where character is shaped. Seneca said, "Difficulty strengthens the mind, as labor does the body." What if, instead of resenting discomfort, you embraced it? What if every challenge became an invitation to grow stronger, wiser, more grounded? Here's the thing, Stoicism is not about suppressing your emotions or pretending you don't feel pain. It's about training your perspective so that pain no longer controls you. When you see suffering as temporary, as part of life's natural flow, and even as an opportunity for growth, it loses its sting. It becomes bearable. You start to understand that you are tougher than you think. And then there's gratitude, a truth that seems so simple yet changes everything when practiced deeply. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning to appreciate being alive. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. Gratitude, for the Stoics, wasn't about ignoring life's problems. It was about remembering that even in difficulty, life itself is a gift. It shifts your focus from what's missing to what's already here, and that shift alone can turn a restless heart into a peaceful one. These first truths, focusing on what you can control, embracing discomfort, and practicing gratitude, are more than ideas. They are a new way of living. When you weave them into your daily thoughts, your morning routines, your reactions to challenges, you begin to notice a change. Life still throws its punches, but they don't hit as hard. The chaos is still there, but you are no longer lost in it. This is just the beginning. In the next part, we'll go deeper into how the Stoics redefine success, purpose, and happiness, and how you can too. Redefining success, purpose, and happiness. We live in an age obsessed with success. But ask yourself, what does success actually mean? Is it wealth, fame, influence? Or is it something deeper? The Stoics had a radically different view of success than the one we are sold today. For them, success had nothing to do with external achievements. It wasn't about your social status, your possessions, or how many people admired you. Success, for the Stoics, meant living in harmony with nature and reason. It meant becoming the best version of yourself, regardless of whether the world applauded you or not. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man of his time, reminded himself daily that titles and riches were fleeting. He wrote, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Self-indulgence means tying it to what happens to you. But sanity means tying it to your own actions." Pause on that. How often do you base your happiness on what others think? How often do you feel good only when life goes your way? This isn't sanity, the Stoics would say, it's slavery. True freedom comes from placing your worth in something unshakable, your character, your principles, your actions. This brings us to purpose. How do you find meaning in a chaotic world? The Stoics believed that purpose wasn't something you discover by searching the ends of the earth. It's something you create by choosing to live virtuously, by contributing to the greater good, by doing the work that's in front of you with care and integrity. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." In other words, don't wait for purpose to find you. Decide who you want to be, and live in alignment with that decision. Imagine approaching each day with this mindset: I may not control what happens today, but I can control how I show up. I can control the effort I put into my work, the kindness I offer others, the discipline I apply to my habits. Suddenly, life feels less overwhelming because you've shifted your focus from the vast, uncontrollable chaos to the small, deliberate choices that shape your soul. And then there's happiness. Here's the Stoic truth that will shock many: happiness is not pleasure, and it's not the absence of pain. It's living in accordance with your values. It's knowing you're doing the right thing, even when it's hard. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future." Think about that. How much of your energy is spent worrying about what's next? How much joy do you sacrifice by chasing a better tomorrow instead of fully inhabiting today? Here's a simple exercise to try tonight. Before you go to bed, write down 3 things you did today that align with your values, moments where you acted with integrity, courage, or kindness. It doesn't matter how small they are. Maybe you resisted an impulse to lash out. Maybe you helped someone without expecting anything in return. Maybe you pushed through discomfort to keep a promise to yourself. These are victories. These are the true building blocks of a happy life. When you redefine success as living virtuously, when you create purpose instead of chasing it, when you ground happiness in your values instead of your circumstances, something profound happens. You become unshakable. Life still brings pain, but that pain no longer breaks you. You begin to understand what the Stoics meant when they said that the good life isn't about what you have, it's about who you are. In the next part, we'll explore another core truth of Stoicism: why detachment isn't about coldness or indifference, but about finding emotional freedom in a world that constantly tests you. The third great Stoic truth that can change your life forever is this: your worth is not determined by what happens to you, but by how you choose to respond to it. This principle may sound simple at first, yet when you begin to live it, it transforms the way you experience everything, from daily frustrations to the heaviest of losses. The ancient Stoics, from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius, reminded us again and again that we do not control the cards we are dealt in life. But we are completely free in how we play them. And this is where true power lies. It is the difference between being a victim of circumstance and being an active shaper of your own destiny. It is the realization that nothing outside of you has the authority to make you less unless you give it that permission. Think about how many people live as though they are defined by external forces. A harsh comment from a stranger ruins their day. A mistake at work becomes an all-consuming identity. They tell themselves they are a failure instead of understanding that failing is just something that happened. A rejection in a relationship convinces them they are unlovable. But what if these events were not verdicts on your worth, but simply challenges, neutral events waiting for your interpretation? Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now." These words are not mere philosophy, they are an instruction manual for emotional freedom. To truly embrace this Stoic truth, you must practice creating space between stimulus and response. Imagine a moment where something goes wrong, a delay, an insult, a disappointment. Most of us react instantly, without thinking. We let the event control our emotions, our words, even our next actions. But the Stoic practice is to pause. To step back mentally and ask, what is really happening here? Is this as catastrophic as my mind is telling me? And what is the most virtuous, most rational way to respond? In that pause lies your freedom. You begin to see that no one else can dictate the kind of person you are, unless you surrender that control. Here is a practical exercise to internalize this truth. Each evening, reflect on the most emotionally intense moments of your day. Ask yourself, what event triggered my reaction? What interpretation did I attach to it? Could I have chosen a different story, one that aligns with reason and my values? Over time, this daily review builds a habit of mindful responses. It trains you to replace impulsive reactions with deliberate actions. Now, let's take this idea further. Epictetus taught that if you wish to be unshakable, you must clearly distinguish between what is up to you and what is not. External events, other people's words, outcomes of your efforts, these are beyond your control. But your choices, your virtues, your inner narrative, these belong entirely to you. This shift in focus is liberating. It is as though you are no longer tossed around by the storms of life, because you realize you cannot control the storm, only the way you sail through it. This is what makes someone truly unbreakable. Modern life offers endless opportunities to apply this principle. When you face criticism online, instead of spiraling into defensiveness or anger, you can choose to interpret it as noise, or even as feedback for growth. When you experience failure, instead of letting it define you, you can see it as a teacher, a temporary setback on the road to mastery. When people behave unjustly, you can choose not to be pulled down by their actions but to hold fast to your own standards of virtue. The Stoics teach us that this control over our inner world is where real strength lives. It's what allows you to remain calm in chaos, grounded in uncertainty, and resilient when life feels unbearable. And when you live this way, you realize something profound. Your happiness no longer depends on life being perfect. It depends on your ability to meet life, in all its imperfections, with wisdom, courage, and grace. So today, take this truth with you. Your value is not up for debate. It does not rise and fall with fortune or misfortune. It is rooted in your ability to respond with reason, with virtue, and with the quiet confidence of someone who understands that while life may be unpredictable, their inner strength is limitless. The fourth Stoic truth that can transform your life is this: discipline is greater than motivation, and virtue is greater than pleasure. This lesson may sound uncomfortable in a world that constantly tells you to follow your feelings, wait for inspiration, and do what makes you happy. But the Stoics understood something that many people still miss. If you wait for motivation to arrive, you will be a slave to your moods, to your impulses, and to the whims of fortune. A person who chases only what feels good will rarely become who they truly want to be. But a person who chooses discipline, who acts with reason, even when it is uncomfortable, becomes unstoppable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning, at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being. He didn't speak of waiting for inspiration. He spoke of duty. To the Stoics, discipline was not harshness for its own sake, it was freedom. It was the ability to govern oneself, to direct one's life toward what truly matters rather than being tossed about by cravings or fear. And it wasn't just about waking up early or working hard. It was about aligning every action with virtue, justice, wisdom, courage, and temperance. Let's reflect on this in our modern context. We live in an age of instant gratification. Food, entertainment, attention, and distraction are available at the tap of a screen. Comfort has become the default state for many of us. But what happens when you live only for comfort? You become fragile. The smallest inconvenience feels unbearable. Your mind grows restless because it was never trained to endure discomfort. And so, when real challenges come, illness, loss, failure, you collapse. The Stoics saw this as a great danger. To live without discipline is to make yourself a prisoner to fortune. How do we begin to practice discipline in a Stoic way? Start with this. Commit to daily actions that strengthen your character, even when you do not feel like doing them. This might mean exercising when you'd rather stay in bed, speaking the truth when it would be easier to stay silent, or studying something deeply when you'd rather be entertained. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." In other words, you will need to endure discomfort, not just physical, but social. You may need to do what others don't understand, because your goal is not to please them. Your goal is to build a mind that cannot be shaken. Here is a practical Stoic exercise: voluntary discomfort. The Stoics recommended occasionally doing without pleasures you could easily have. Seneca would eat simple, even unpleasant meals and sleep on a hard surface, reminding himself that he could endure far less than his luxurious surroundings offered. Why? Because when you practice giving up small comforts, you train yourself to face greater losses with strength. You discover that happiness is not tied to luxury, and that you can remain whole even when life strips away what you love. In today's world, voluntary discomfort could mean turning off your devices for a full day to reclaim your focus. It could mean fasting for a short period, walking instead of driving, or challenging yourself to speak to someone you've been avoiding out of fear. These are not acts of self-punishment. They are acts of liberation. They remind you that you are not owned by your cravings. And discipline is not only about denying yourself, it is also about choosing to live intentionally. Ask yourself, what are the values I want to embody every day? Do my habits reflect these values? If they don't, where can I change? Seneca warned that without purpose, we drift through life like a boat without a rudder. Discipline gives us that rudder. It allows us to steer even when the waters are rough. Imagine the difference this makes. A disciplined mind does not collapse in the face of temptation or hardship. It does not become paralyzed by procrastination or self-doubt. It acts. It endures. It stays committed to its values, whether or not the world applauds. And over time, that kind of character becomes unbreakable. The Stoics remind us, pleasure fades. Motivation comes and goes. But a life of disciplined virtue leaves you with something far greater, a sense of integrity, a deep well of inner strength, and the peace of knowing that you lived as you intended, not as the world demanded. So take this truth to heart: don't wait to feel ready. Don't chase what is easy. Choose what is right, practice it daily, and watch as you build a mind, and a life, that no storm can destroy. The fifth Stoic truth that will change your life forever is this: your mind is the only true fortress, and it can be trained to withstand anything. The Stoics believed that while the world outside of us may be unpredictable and often harsh, the world within us, our thoughts, our judgments, our choices, can become unshakable. This idea was not simply comforting rhetoric. It was a call to action. It meant that no matter how chaotic, unjust, or painful the world became, you could still build an inner citadel, a stronghold of reason and virtue that no one could breach. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves, in the country, by the sea, in the mountains, but you are capable of finding retreat at any moment in your own mind." This was his reminder that peace is not a place you travel to, it is a state you cultivate. And to cultivate it, you need to train your mind every day, the same way a soldier trains for battle. The Stoics were warriors of the soul. They practiced philosophy not as a hobby, but as preparation for life's inevitable storms. Think about what this means in practical terms. Most of us live as though our peace depends entirely on external factors: a good job, a supportive partner, enough money, pleasant weather, polite strangers. And when those things are disrupted, we feel helpless. But the Stoic perspective flips this on its head. It says, you cannot control the world, but you can always control how you meet it. You can choose your response. You can remain calm in the face of insult, grateful in the face of loss, courageous in the face of fear. So how do you build this fortress of the mind? One way is through awareness. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." This means that the way we interpret events, not the events themselves, creates our suffering. If someone insults you, it is not their words that hurt, it is your belief that those words define you or diminish you. If you lose money, it is not the loss itself that crushes you, it is the belief that your worth depends on wealth. When you learn to question these automatic judgments, you loosen their hold on you. Another practice is negative visualization, also known as premeditatio malorum. This is the Stoic habit of imagining worst-case scenarios in advance, not to dwell in fear, but to prepare the mind. Seneca often advised picturing life without comforts, loved ones, or status. Why? Because when you rehearse losing what you value, you appreciate it more while you have it, and you panic less if it's taken away. This practice removes the element of surprise from misfortune and replaces it with readiness. And then there is voluntary hardship, which we touched on earlier but now expand. The Stoics would intentionally expose themselves to discomfort, fasting, wearing simple clothing, living without luxuries, so that when true hardship arrived, they were not shattered by it. They understood that if your mind can remain steady when life is inconvenient, it will be resilient when life becomes unbearable. Modern applications of these practices are endless. You can begin by setting aside a few minutes daily for mindful reflection. Ask yourself, what assumptions am I making about what I need to be happy? Could I still live meaningfully without them? Try reducing your reliance on constant stimulation, spend time in silence, walk without headphones, or resist the urge to check your phone the moment you feel discomfort. These may seem small, but each act strengthens your ability to sit with unease without breaking. The Stoics also warned against the trap of catastrophizing, blowing problems out of proportion. When something bad happens, pause and ask, is this truly as terrible as it feels? Will this matter in a week, a month, a year? Often, we find that the pain of an event is magnified by the story we tell ourselves about it. By challenging that story, we dismantle its power. Imagine your mind as a castle. Each disciplined thought is a brick. Each act of self-control strengthens the walls. Each moment of reflection deepens the foundation. Over time, this fortress becomes so solid that no insult, no failure, no tragedy can completely collapse it. That doesn't mean you feel nothing. The Stoics were not advocating for emotional numbness. It means you remain rooted, even as the storms rage around you. In our modern world, where outrage, fear, and anxiety are constantly amplified, this inner fortress is more important than ever. Social media, news cycles, and cultural pressures all attempt to hijack your attention and emotions. But the Stoics remind us that you are the gatekeeper of your mind. You decide what enters. You decide what judgments to hold. You decide whether the world breaks you or makes you wiser. Building an unbreakable mind is not an overnight achievement. It is a lifelong discipline. But every moment you practice, every time you pause before reacting, every time you choose reason over impulse, you are strengthening that fortress. And one day, you will wake up and realize, the chaos no longer controls you. You stand firm, unshaken, truly free. The sixth Stoic truth that can change your life is this: freedom is not found in doing whatever you want, it is found in mastering yourself. This idea might sound counterintuitive in a culture that glorifies personal freedom as unlimited choice and self-indulgence. But for the Stoics, true freedom had nothing to do with satisfying every impulse. It was about gaining control over your desires, your fears, and your reactions. Because if you are ruled by them, you are not free at all, you are a slave to them. Epictetus was once a slave in Rome. He endured the harshest conditions, and yet he wrote words that still resonate today: no man is free who is not master of himself. Imagine that. A man who had no legal or physical freedom declared himself free because his mind was unshaken. Why? Because no one could control what he thought, what he valued, and how he chose to respond to life's blows. Now consider your own life. How often do you act on autopilot? How often do your cravings, for food, for validation, for distractions, pull you in directions you later regret? How often do your fears, of rejection, of failure, of discomfort, stop you from doing what you know is right? The Stoics teach us that every time we give in without reflection, we weaken ourselves. But every time we pause, take a breath, and act in accordance with reason and virtue, we strengthen our freedom. Let's bring this into a modern context. Think about your phone. How many times do you reach for it without even realizing? You are not choosing, you are being pulled by habit. The same is true of anger. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and before you even process what happened, you are already reacting. Is that freedom? Or is that a kind of slavery to impulses? The Stoic path to freedom begins with awareness. Before you can master yourself, you must notice your patterns. What triggers your anger? What feeds your anxiety? What temptations leave you feeling empty afterward? Once you identify them, you can begin to interrupt them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." These are simple words, but they are profound. They invite you to live with intention instead of being carried by impulses. Next comes delayed gratification. Seneca often advised practicing small acts of self-denial, skipping a meal, sleeping on a hard bed, walking in the cold without complaint, not because discomfort is inherently good, but because it teaches you that your happiness does not depend on comfort. When you can endure discomfort willingly, you no longer fear it. And when you no longer fear it, you are free from its power. There's also the practice of reframing desires. The Stoics didn't suppress all desires, they distinguished between natural, healthy ones and those that lead to enslavement. Wanting food to live is natural. Obsessing over gourmet meals to feel worthy, that's enslavement. Wanting connection is human. Craving constant approval to feel secure, that's bondage. When you can see the difference, you reclaim control. Ask yourself, what do I truly need for a meaningful life? Is it the endless chase for more, or is it living in alignment with my values? This question cuts through much of the noise of modern life. Because at the core of Stoic freedom is living by principle, not by impulse. Here's a practical exercise. For one day, observe yourself without judgment. Every time you feel the urge to act, to check your phone, to defend yourself in an argument, to indulge in comfort, pause and ask, am I choosing this? Or am I being dragged by habit or fear? That simple pause creates space. And in that space, freedom begins. Another helpful practice is what I call the Stoic audit. Once a week, journal honestly, what choices this week did I make from strength? And which did I make from weakness? Did I act according to my values, or did I let my impulses win? This is not about shaming yourself, it's about building awareness so you can choose better next time. Imagine the liberation of walking through life unshaken by cravings, undisturbed by insults, undistracted by the constant noise of modern existence. Imagine making choices not because you are pressured, but because you have deliberately decided they are right. That is freedom in the Stoic sense. It is quiet, powerful, and unbreakable. The more you practice this, the more you realize that external freedom, wealth, status, luxury, is fragile and temporary. But internal freedom, the mastery of your own mind and actions, is untouchable. And once you taste it, you will never want to go back to living as a slave to your impulses. Turning pain into power, how the Stoics transformed suffering. The seventh Stoic truth that has the power to change your life forever is this: pain, when embraced with wisdom, becomes a tool for transformation rather than a source of destruction. Most people see pain as an intruder, an enemy to be avoided at all costs. They try to run from it, numb it with distractions, or bury it deep until it festers. But the Stoics understood something revolutionary, that pain, whether physical or emotional, can become one of our greatest teachers if we learn how to face it with the right mindset. Marcus Aurelius, who endured immense suffering, the loss of many of his children, the weight of leading a fractured empire, illness, and betrayal, wrote these profound words: "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." In other words, pain is not just what happens to us, it is how we interpret and respond to it. This is where the Stoic approach diverges sharply from the way most of us live today. When something painful happens, our instinct is to ask, "Why me? How can I escape this?" But the Stoics taught us to ask a better question: what can this teach me? How can I use this to become stronger? Pain, when reframed, ceases to be an obstacle and instead becomes fuel for growth. Epictetus, who suffered brutal abuse and lived his life with a permanent disability, put it simply: do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. He didn't mean that we should love pain for its own sake. He meant that when we stop resisting reality, we can start using it to our advantage. Let's make this practical. Think about heartbreak. It can feel like the end of the world. But what if, instead of viewing it as a crushing loss, you saw it as a chance to rediscover your own worth and independence? Or consider failure. Instead of framing it as humiliation, what if you saw it as one of the most honest forms of feedback, a guidepost pointing you toward a wiser path? Suddenly, pain shifts from being a wall to climb over to a bridge that carries you forward. The Stoics also practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining possible hardships before they happened. This wasn't pessimism. It was mental training. By picturing loss, failure, or pain ahead of time, they prepared themselves emotionally. Then, when pain inevitably came, it didn't shatter them, it met a mind that had already made peace with the possibility of suffering. Here's a practical exercise for you. The next time you are in pain, whether from grief, rejection, or even physical discomfort, write a letter to yourself from the perspective of a Stoic philosopher. Imagine Marcus Aurelius or Seneca speaking directly to you. What would they say? How would they guide you to find strength in your suffering? This mental exercise creates distance between you and your pain, helping you see it not as an unbearable weight but as a challenge you are capable of carrying. Think about how different your life could feel if you saw every setback as a stepping stone. The broken friendship. A lesson in setting boundaries and valuing yourself. The missed opportunity. A reminder to stay flexible and patient. The grief of losing someone. A call to love deeply while you still can. Imagine walking through life with this mindset. You don't flinch when things go wrong. You don't collapse when you're hurt. Instead, you pause, you breathe, and you ask, how can this make me better? That is the Stoic way. Ultimately, the Stoics teach us that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we can always choose our response. And when we do, we transform pain from a force that crushes us into a force that forges us. The art of letting go, mastering detachment for true freedom. The eighth Stoic truth that has the power to reshape your life is one of the most challenging to embrace, yet one of the most liberating: learning the art of letting go. So much of our pain, our stress, and our restlessness come from trying to hold on to people, to possessions, to status, to expectations of how life should be. We grasp so tightly at what is ultimately beyond our control, and in doing so, we chain ourselves to endless disappointment. The Stoics saw this clinging for what it truly is, a source of suffering. Marcus Aurelius reminds us in his Meditations, receive without pride, let go without attachment. Everything we have, our health, our relationships, our wealth, even our lives, is on loan from the universe. It is not ours to own forever. And yet, how often do we live as if loss is unnatural, as if life owes us permanence? This illusion makes every change feel like a betrayal. Epictetus offered a powerful metaphor. When you kiss your child or your spouse, whisper to yourself, they are mortal. This wasn't a call for coldness or detachment in the modern sense. It was a practice in cherishing without clinging. He meant that when we truly acknowledge the temporary nature of everything we hold dear, we can love more deeply, live more presently, and release our grip when the time comes, not without pain, but without despair. Think about how this applies in your daily life. How much of your anxiety comes from trying to control things that simply cannot be controlled? The behavior of others, the future, the past, outcomes that are beyond your reach. The Stoics encourage us to focus instead on what is within our power, our thoughts, our choices, our actions. This shift doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. Here's a simple but profound exercise. Write down everything you fear losing. Your job, your home, your relationships. Then ask yourself, if I lost this tomorrow, who would I be without it? What virtues would I need to lean on to move forward? This is not an exercise in pessimism. It is an exercise in freedom. When you accept the impermanence of what you hold dear, you loosen the chains of fear. Consider this in the context of relationships. Many of us hold on to people not out of love but out of fear, fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of change. But what if you could love people as the Stoics suggest, fully, deeply, but without ownership? It would free you to see relationships as they are, beautiful, fleeting, and transformative, without trying to make them permanent in a world where nothing is. This also applies to your ambitions. Goals are vital, but when you tie your identity and self-worth to the outcome, you set yourself up for devastation when life does what it always does, changes. The Stoic approach. Strive fully, but release attachment to the results. Seneca wrote, "The wise man regards nothing as his own. He does not cling to fortune's gifts." In this way, success becomes a journey, not a desperate grasp at validation. Imagine how freeing it would be to walk through life without clutching at everything you fear losing. You would still care, still strive, still love, but with open hands instead of clenched fists. When change comes, as it inevitably does, it will sting, but it won't shatter you. Ultimately, letting go is not about apathy. It is about courage. It takes courage to say, "I will love without clinging. I will work without obsessing over results. I will live fully, knowing that everything I cherish will one day change." This is not detachment from life. It is deep engagement with life, but from a place of acceptance rather than fear. Marcus Aurelius said, "When you rise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." And when you live this way, when you embrace impermanence, every moment becomes a gift, not something you are entitled to, but something you are fortunate to experience. This is the Stoic art of letting go. It's not about closing your heart. It's about opening it so fully that when life changes, as it always does, you can bow to it, accept it, and keep walking forward, unbroken. The fortress within, building resilience against life's storms. The ninth Stoic truth is about becoming unshakable in a world that constantly tries to knock you down. The Stoics believe that while we cannot control the winds of fate, we can build a fortress within, a place of resilience so strong that no storm can destroy it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These words are easy to read but difficult to live. Most of us live as if our peace depends on everything outside of us, the approval of others, the success of our plans, the comfort of our routines. But the Stoics turn this thinking upside down. They teach us that true security doesn't come from life being predictable or easy. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you can endure. Resilience, in Stoic philosophy, is not a natural gift but a skill, something you build through practice. They used a method called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Every morning, a Stoic would imagine possible challenges, losing money, being insulted, facing illness, or enduring hardship. This wasn't pessimism. It was training. By rehearsing difficulties in their minds, they weakened their emotional power. When misfortune arrived, they weren't surprised or crushed. They were ready. Try it yourself. Imagine waking up tomorrow to find that one of your plans failed, or someone spoke ill of you, or something precious was taken from you. How would you respond? The Stoic exercise is to practice meeting these situations with dignity and calm, not because they don't hurt, but because you've already faced them in your mind. Seneca wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." Replace death with any fear, rejection, failure, loss, and you see the truth. Fear paralyzes us. Resilience frees us. A resilient mind doesn't deny pain, it acknowledges it and refuses to be ruled by it. Another cornerstone of resilience is learning to separate what happens from what you tell yourself about what happens. Epictetus explained, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." Imagine two people who lose their job. One sees it as a disaster, the end of their worth. The other sees it as a painful but valuable opportunity to start anew. The same event, but two completely different worlds. This is the Stoic superpower, controlling the narrative you tell yourself. Here's a practical exercise. When something disrupts your peace, pause and ask, is this bad because it truly is, or because I have decided to label it as bad? Often, you'll find that the suffering comes not from the event itself but from your interpretation of it. The Stoics also teach resilience through voluntary discomfort, deliberately stepping out of comfort to grow your inner strength. Seneca would sometimes sleep on the floor or eat simple meals, reminding himself, "Is this what I feared?" When you practice small discomforts, the big ones lose their power over you. Modern life shields us from hardship, but it also makes us fragile. The Stoics knew that controlled struggle makes you stronger. Finally, building resilience requires understanding what is truly yours. You don't own your reputation, your possessions, or even your body. You own only your mind, your choices, your character, your response. When you anchor your identity to this, nothing external can fully break you. Imagine walking through life like this, calm in chaos, steady in loss, unmoved by insults, prepared for storms. This is not indifference. It's true strength. It's the ability to remain whole when the world tries to pull you apart. Marcus Aurelius captured it beautifully. Be like the rock against which the surf crashes, and it stands firm, while the raging of the sea falls still around it. This is the fortress within. And when you build it, life can shake you, but it will never destroy you. As we reach the end of this journey through 20 Stoic truths, let us take a moment to sit with what these teachings truly mean. Philosophy, especially Stoicism, is not a collection of nice ideas meant to decorate our thoughts. It is a discipline, a way of life, a set of tools designed to transform how we experience the world. These truths we have explored are not just intellectual concepts, they are the very foundations for a life lived with strength, purpose, and serenity. They remind us that wisdom is not about avoiding difficulty but about facing it with courage, about transforming obstacles into opportunities, and about building an inner fortress that no external storm can break. Imagine waking up each morning with a deep sense of clarity about what you can and cannot control. Instead of being pulled in every direction by the chaos of the world, you begin the day anchored in your values, grounded in the present moment, and ready to face whatever comes with composure. This is the Stoic way, not to wish for an easier life, but to become stronger within the life you already have. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that he could not control what others did or what fate brought his way, but he could always control his mind, his choices, and his responses. When you begin to practice this, truly practice it, life takes on a different quality. You are no longer a prisoner of events or opinions, you are free. The beauty of these truths is that they apply in every corner of life. When someone criticizes you unfairly, you can choose to pause, breathe, and decide if their words truly matter. When life places a heavy burden on your shoulders, you can choose to see it not as a curse but as an invitation to grow stronger. When joy visits you unexpectedly, you can embrace it fully, savoring it without clinging to it, knowing that life is always changing and that peace comes from gratitude for the moment, not from grasping at what cannot last. But here is the part we often forget: these principles are not mastered in a single day. They require practice, repetition, and reflection. The Stoics journaled daily, reviewed their actions, and constantly adjusted their lives to align more closely with their values. They understood that wisdom is not an achievement, it is a lifelong journey. Epictetus reminded his students that philosophy is not about speaking clever words, but about living them. And Seneca urged us to measure our days not by their length, but by the depth with which we live them. So, what will you do with these truths? Will they stay as ideas you once heard, or will they become part of your daily rhythm? Perhaps you can begin by journaling tonight, writing about the challenges you faced today and how you responded. Were you guided by your values? Did you react impulsively or with intention? These small acts of reflection build self-awareness. Or tomorrow, when you wake up, take a moment to set an intention. Today I will focus only on what I can control. Today I will meet adversity with courage. Today I will live with integrity. These are not just words, they are commitments to yourself. And remember, practicing these truths does not mean you will never falter. You will. You will still have moments of anger, fear, or doubt. But that is why Stoicism invites us to return, again and again, to these principles. Each time you do, you build strength. Each time you fall and get up, you become more resilient. That is the essence of becoming unbreakable, not avoiding hardship, but learning to stand firm in the middle of it. If these reflections have spoken to you, let them not end here. Carry them into your life. Let them shape how you treat others, how you handle challenges, how you see yourself. And I invite you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters, and it may be the very thing that inspires someone else who is searching for this same wisdom. If this journey has brought you value, consider subscribing to the channel. Together, we can build a space for learning, reflection, and growth, a community of people committed to living with courage, peace, and wisdom. Let us walk this path together.